Halliburton's got the ball. Halliburton rises up. And there's a whistle. Oh, my goodness. Tyrese Halliburton hits a three and is fouled.
You have got to be kidding me.
McConnell underneath the basket. Looking. Toppin in the corner for three.
Oh, yeah! Yeah! OB!
Pacers have it, a chance to tie.
Yeah, Nembhard
hits the three. Nembhard gives Indiana the lead.
Hello and welcome to the Pacers Fever Show, where we cover everything happening in professional basketball across the state of Indiana, from the Pacers to the Fever and everything in between. I'm your host, Logan, and today we're breaking down Indiana's Game 1 win over the Milwaukee Bucks, a strong start to this series and a performance that should turn some heads in the NBA and around the league as far as the media is concerned, which we need a lot of just because we got a lot of trash talk for the Pacers going into this series against the Bucks. We'll get to how the Pacers pulled this off, from Halliburton's command of the offense to Siakam's two-way impact and the team's composure down the stretch to close this one out. Plus, look at what this win means going forward and what to expect in Game 2 as we preview that. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Pacers Fever Show. Again, this is a podcast that covers the Indiana Pacers and the Indiana Fever. We are covering the Pacers today as they get a huge Game 1 win. Pacers 117, Bucks 98 on Saturday, April 9th, as we were recording this on Sunday, April 20th. The next game, Game 2, is going to be Tuesday, April 22nd. Milwaukee at Indiana at 7 p.m. Eastern time on NBA TV. I about said ESPN. NBA TV, so we're going to get some local guys going to cover the game. I believe NBA TV still does the thing where they're going to put, they might be different from the playoffs, but I believe they usually put the local broadcast, playoff broadcast on, so that should be Chris Denary and Quinn Buckner. If not, you can find them on FanDuel. I know they're still doing the games, at least the first 4 games of this series. I don't know how the TV stuff works with the 5, 6, and 7. I think if they're on ESPN, I think ESPN is the only one that really truly restricts other local coverage of sports. I think because ESPN works that into their TV deals that they have exclusive rights to some of these playoff games. But Game 1 in the books, huge win for the Pacers. This is why you want the 4th seed. We've talked about this multiple times on this podcast in our first episode. So if you're checking this out, thanks again for listening. But you can subscribe over on YouTube if you're interested in the visual portion of this podcast, or you can listen anywhere that you can find podcasts. So again, we appreciate you tuning back in for this summary of Game 1 and recap of Game 1 as the Pacers again win 117-98, and that's a huge win again for the Pacers as they retain home court advantage. Game 2 Tuesday will be very important because there are some interesting storylines coming out for Game 2 that we will talk about here in just a few seconds. It was a sellout crowd, 17,274 filled in and filed into Gainbridge Fieldhouse. I love the gold. A lot of people don't like the gold that the Pacers fans wore. I've got the OKC game on right here next to me. Kind of glance over here every once in a while, check the scores, but they've got the white on and it looks good. The gold looks great. I will say there was a lot of feedback online for the Pacers front office, or I guess the marketing folks that make the shirts. We've always done the gold shirts though, so I don't know why people were shocked. I think there's only been a couple times where we've gone more navy blue, like a blue out kind of thing. And I know that they did one where they did like a dark blue and white that looked like a checkered flag for when the Indianapolis 500 was going on during that Eastern Conference Final Series run against the Heat in Indy. And I know they did like the checker flag look with the dark blue and white squares across the whole stadium. It made it look like a checkered flag, which was really cool, but the Pacers got destroyed. So don't ever do that again, Indiana, if you're listening to this. But I like the gold out. They said it clashed with the City Edition court, which, I mean, if you're going to play that game, yeah, I mean, it really does kind of clash just because it's a light blue and a very highlighter yellow that they go with their City Edition jerseys, which I've gotten great feedback from different people that I've talked to and kind of interacted with on Twitter and stuff like that about just their jerseys and color schemes. They look great. And I really do like that look. It's a nice, fresh look. I do wonder if the Pacers ever lean into that more of a rebranding kind of thing, but we'll see. I do like that they do their City Editions, and those City Editions in the white look a lot better than the city editions that were black. I just like the white a lot better. It looks like it pops, and the color schemes, and the court's kind of a dark black like overlay of the hardwood floor. It looks really good, but it the yellow does, it is a little weird because it's an off color from what the other yellow is. So it's more mustardy gold, where this is the yellow that's in the city edition is more highlighter. So I guess that's my only complaint for the game for game one. But yeah, huge news. This is what we were talking about. Huge news for game two. Damian Lillard, news just before tip in game one. Shams Charania, on NBA Countdown. Shams reported that Damian Lillard will be back for game two or game three. I always like that reporting. Well, what's the difference between game two or game three? Is it like, how about today? No? Okay. Game three. It's funny that they do that. It's kind of like they're guessing and they don't know which one. So, but I will have a guess for you. I think it'll be game two. I think the way that there was some chatter late in the fourth quarter where Tyrese Halliburton is going to the huddle for a timeout. I think it was a TV timeout, or they were going in for a replay or something. I can't remember what it was, but they go for a timeout and he's backing away from the Bucks bench. But the Bucks bench, you know how they come out during timeouts. There was something said before the timeout or as the timeout's happening. I think Dame said something to Tyrese because Tyrese did something. And so then Tyrese is chirping back to him, and Dame comes out. And Dame's, he's not trying to get to Tyrese. He's just talking to him, and people are trying to lip read it. And it does look like he says, "We're coming for you," or like, "I can take you," or "Sit your what down. We were, I'm coming back Tuesday," kind of thing. It was very strange, and it's just, this series has always been chippy, but it is interesting. I do feel like some of the same characters aren't really around. Oh, there's my cats. They will jump in the podcast. They love podcasting. So that's actually Hazel, but she's excited to talk about this. So this series was always going to be chippy, but I do feel like the cast of characters that were around that really caused problems, like a Pat Bev, like he really egged on a lot of this stuff. And I just feel like there's such a new rotation of cast and characters that really, and Giannis doesn't really play into this. The only time Giannis has ever gone crazy was when he went running into the tunnel for his basketball. But he didn't really it doesn't look like he's trying to like really do anything. He's just kind of yelling. And I don't know, Giannis he doesn't really get wrapped up in that, which, I mean, kudos to him. Tyrese will always chirp with whoever he wants, and Pascal will get involved as well. But Pascal is usually like, "Come on, let's just play. Like, go sit down." But when you start picking at Tyrese, that's when Pascal usually has issues. When you're talking to his teammates, that's when he gets defensive. And then James Johnson comes over, of course, and you have all that. And there's just a lot of conversation going back and forth. Nothing's really happening. They're just yelling at each other, and it's chippy. But I mean, this was at the point where the Pacers had the game locked up. Game one was theirs, and it was a strange moment, I think, for the Bucks, just because it felt very like half-hearted from Dame, because I mean, what's he gonna do? Run over there in his Louis Vuitton? Like, I don't know what's actually gonna transpire. And Tyrese isn't somebody that's gonna really pick fights with people. Like, it had a weird vibe. But anyway, Spicy P chatter got him a technical, and then Dame got a technical as well. But it did add some intrigue, because that storyline, game two is when he could return, and game two being on Tuesday, so they played Saturday afternoon at 1 p.m. Eastern time. Well, 1:10. All these games start 10 minutes after the projected starting time. But you play game one, and then I guess the Bucks, I didn't know this, but Alex Golden on Setting the Pace and Facci, they were talking about the fact that, and they must have asked Doc this, or Doc must have brought it up, or somebody from the Bucks brought it up. The Bucks will actually be flying back, or actually flew back to Milwaukee after yesterday's game. Yeah, they flew back after yesterday's game. They'll spend, obviously they spent yesterday night in their own home. And then Sunday, it's Easter Sunday today, so I'm assuming a lot of them are spending time with their families. So Sunday they'll be there. And then after practice on Monday, I think Monday afternoon, they fly back to Indianapolis to stay in Indianapolis for Tuesday night's game, which is at 7 p.m. Eastern time. And a lot of Bucks fans will go, "Good, they're sleeping there in bed." But travel, I mean, even if it's a day, travel will do something to you. And so I don't really know. I don't know why they decided. I think maybe because of Easter, the Easter holiday. I think maybe they were like, and there's enough time, I guess, that this is kind of a normal flight schedule that they would have for games that were happening in the season. They would kind of take this similar approach, but it was strange that they decided not to just stay in Indianapolis. Like, if I'm a player, and I know sleeping in your own bed has its has its benefits, but also, I mean, there'd become a point where I'd be like, I don't really want to get back on a plane and travel back down and then get in a hotel room on, because, there could be delays. There's weather up there quite a bit right now. Something goes wrong with the plane. They're sitting on the tarmac forever. Have to unload the plane, or, something like that happens. I just feel like that's strange for them to wait and they're, to not stay in Indy, but they're not. And I think it's only an hour flight, hour and a half flight. So it's not too bad to fly back, but just thought that was a really interesting note that they were going back to Milwaukee, because I don't think the Pacers will do the same. Sorry. I think the Pacers would probably have gone to Milwaukee and stayed in Milwaukee, but I don't know. It just depends probably on the personnel and the families that were back home. Dame stats. Okay, so let's get into this. I've got this noted because a lot of people talking about Dame this, Dame that, Bucks this, Bucks that, as they usually do. And I get it. Like, they're trying to market the best player in the league. Giannis is the best player in the league. And there's a lot of chatter around whether Giannis's future is going to be in Milwaukee if they exit the playoffs once again and they can't really build a team around him next year. And what does that look like? And will Giannis eventually voice his frustration? Because he's shown his frustration. He's talked about other things. The really weird comment for me was when Luka Doncic, I think it was, or it might have not even been the Luka trade. It might have been, I think it was the Luka trade, because I don't know what else would have sparred this, or it could have been Jokic or somebody. But basically, when Luka was traded, I believe it was Giannis that came out and said, well, who wouldn't want to see all these really great players in big markets? So it kind of made me think, like, okay, like, where do you want to go then? Because Milwaukee's not a big market. Does that mean you're headed to LA? Does that mean you're headed to Miami? Are you going to New York? Like, what do you mean by that? That's a really weird comment to make, and you not be included in that because you are the best player in the league. So I'm very confused by that. 2-time MVP, and you're saying that. But anyway, the reason why I wanted to talk about Dame was because reason it got onto that topic was there is so much talk in the media of Damian Lillard being back, and Damian Lillard being the reason why the Bucks will advance past the Pacers, even with a 1-0, 2-0 series lead. People are still saying when Dame comes back, he will be the difference maker, and he is what can propel Milwaukee forward. Now, they will say can propel because they don't want to stick themselves in that. Maybe Kendrick Perkins does, because he seems to say some off the chart things. But I do believe that the national media, they obviously, yes, that's true. Damian Lillard gives them a better chance to propel themselves forward past the Pacers. There's nothing wrong in them saying that. But I think what national media does to really hurt that is the fact that, one, they've got these former players on here, and then this is kind of just these former players that were not good former players. They were role players. They're all role players. Like, it just doesn't seem, which is funny because then you watch somebody like Kenny Smith, Charles Barkley, and Shaq. They're very calculated in what they say. And I don't know if it's because TNT holds themselves to a higher standard and ESPN has just kind of lost the plot, and Fox Sports and CBS and all of them have kind of lost the plot with some of this stuff. But ESPN seems to be notorious for this, and they love that clickbaity entertainment drama. And maybe it's because it's the Disney company that owns it. They love that drama, the storytelling. And so to have a story, sometimes you got to create and fathom one. There's this belief that the Pacers last season got by the Bucks because Giannis wasn't playing. Is that true? Yes. I do think that the Pacers lose last year's first round series if Giannis is playing, because Giannis is healthy. Giannis is a year younger. Dame's a year younger. Brooks a year younger. Chris Middleton wasn't as hurt as he had normally been, especially this year. He's no longer with the team. I just feel like there was this story behind that the Pacers only got through them and the Knicks because of injuries. You can only play the teams that are in front of you, and yes, injuries had an impact. But I also think they undersold what the Pacers did last season. And I think it's showing now at the beginning of this series. They won't credit it to that. They'll continue to tell you it's because Dame is not there. The Bucks are not at full strength. Then if they do end up losing this series, the Bucks with Dame and Giannis, they'll start to question, well, it's the cast of characters around them, or they'll start to blame the fact that maybe Giannis just doesn't want to be there. Like, I don't know. The Pacers got the advantage. Like, they'll make up all sorts of excuses as to why Giannis didn't play to the level that he could, when ultimately the Pacers did exactly what they were supposed to do in game one and all season long and got that fourth seed. But again, that'll be ignored by the national media. And I don't want to talk too much about that because we do get into that kind of black hole of the Pacers never get any love. They're always out to get the Pacers. There are aspects of that, but like I do think that you can look at things from a perspective where you can see where their discounting of the Pacers actually points out the flaws of other teams. So One thing is Dame and Giannis, while playing together, are good. But that being said, Giannis is not averaging 35 points a game and Dame averaging 35 points a game against the Pacers. In fact, did you know Dame is not even averaging 20 points a game with Giannis on the floor against the Pacers in the last 2 seasons? Like, that's how different Giannis and Dame, well, that he did 21 below, I guess, because he's right at 20. But for last season, this season only at 18, just a spoiler. But there becomes this thing where people think of basketball and sports as linear, where when you add somebody, that ultimately makes you better by adding that person, and you can put those points or those assists and just tack them on to the team rather than understanding what actually happens when you impact a rotation in basketball. I've coached it, I've played it. I know what it's like to be on the inside of some basketball teams, and there's other people that, I don't want this to sound like, oh, just because I played at a high school level, which isn't even a high level, but having been around the game, having a father who's coached basketball, a grandfather who's coached basketball, being around basketball my whole life, being in the Hoosier State and being around people that coach basketball at the college level and talking to them and understanding them, and then being around friends who've played at college level type places, and then coaching with, when I was an assistant coach with a coach that had played college ball, and they talked about this too, and it's so true. What happens when you put a player in a rotation isn't always positive. Everything has a consequence to what you're doing, and I think in basketball this is so true because Damian Lillard, while very good and can implement different things that will challenge this Pacer team and make the Bucks better than they were without Dame, there are also some things that happen that Dame, adding him back in, it doesn't really impact the Pacers too much, and it actually might benefit the Pacers in different aspects as well, where you start to get into this, like, yes, there are some factors that are plus, but there's also some cons into Damian Lillard coming back for the Bucks. I don't think people focus on this because they just want to talk about basketball linear. They don't want to talk about how it impacts and ebbs and flows, and how rotations can take that and make it multi-dimensional and make it to where you really have to understand how these players gel. And this happens all the time with NBA teams. You've seen it with the Phoenix Suns. The Phoenix Sun on paper, on a linear level, on a plane, on a surface of just looking at their lineup, should have been one of the best teams in all of NBA, but they're one of the worst. They were underperforming. They missed the playoffs. They were a train wreck. Injuries got to, like, all these things can happen. You talk about this with basketball all the time, right? So here's the things. The pros of bringing back Damian Lillard. Damian Lillard is a shot creator. He is a ball dominant guard that can get his own. He will score. He will hit threes. He will play in big moments. He will hit big shots. And that is something the Pacers are going to have to deal with. However, that being said, the Pacers have always done a really good job when Damian and Giannis have been on the court together. And I'm going to share some stats with you just to tell you, and this might be an ease of mind for Pacer fans. And I'm not saying that Damian can't just blow up and they go on this epic run where they knock the Pacers out now because Giannis and Dame are both healthy, because that's all they talked about last year is, just imagine if we had them healthy, they would beat you. I don't know if that's necessarily true, in the fact that Damian Lillard takes a second seat to Giannis, and Giannis is a ball dominant forward where he always has the ball. It seems like Giannis always has the ball. He gets it every single time down. Damian will get every once in a while a chance to really just create a shot on his own, but he's not really looking at that. He's looking to involve Giannis because Giannis is one of the best players in the world. So you have this aspect, right? Let me read you off some stats. So when they've played together, Giannis has averaged his 30 points a game against the Pacers. So this is this season, 4 games. Bucks have won 3 of those 4. You know, and that's another thing I think the national media is not, because they don't cover the Pacers. They look at it as anybody probably would that covers the league, not a team specific. You got a lot of the idea of like, well, the Bucks beat the Pacers 3 times this year. They must have been on a revenge tour. But you also have to realize Tyrese Halliburton was awful in the first part of this season, was horrible. He missed a game. Then you go and talk about Aaron Nesmith, who also misses games against the Bucks. Andrew Nembhard's not as effective. Pascal Siakam was having an all-star level performance. You also had 2 games where the Pacers played the Bucks on back-to-backs. So back-to-backs, I mean, those are really difficult games to win, especially in the traveling they had to do. They had to go from Philly to Milwaukee one time. They went from from Chicago to Milwaukee. So these are they're not easy games to necessarily do anything with because they're back-to-backs, and not to make excuses, but any team is going to struggle back-to-back in the NBA. It's just how it works. The Bucks weren't playing in back-to-back. So there's a lot of things that factor into why the Pacers might have lost it. But looking at it from bird's eye view, that's what the national media would have thought. Giannis in those games, those 4 games against the Pacers, 30 points per game, shot 64.9%. He did not make a single 3-pointer against the Indiana Pacers. He was a 72% free throw shooter, which is not normal for him. He's usually way less than that. He would grab 12.3 rebounds a game. He had 7.5 assists, so he's a facilitator as well. But he also had 4.3 turnovers. And that's one thing that Giannis has always been criticized about. One of 2 things. He doesn't hit free throws. I guess you could say 3. He doesn't hit any threes. He doesn't really take threes. And he turns the ball over. For one of the best players in the world, he turns the ball over a lot. 4 times a game is a lot. And they're usually live ball. Like, he doesn't typically lose them by throwing them out of bounds. It's usually when he's going to drive and he just loses it. Like, it usually live balls, very dangerous for a team like Indiana who capitalize on live ball turnovers, love it. They lead the league in like fast break points. So they love that. They want you to do that. The Pacers love to run and they love live ball turnovers. So that doesn't really work well in his favor. But you look at the stats numbers, 30 points, right? 30 points. He had 12.3. The guy almost averaged as a triple-double against Indiana. But then you look at Damian Lillard, right? And here's why I want to bring this up. Anytime that Giannis and Damian have played together against the Pacers in the last 2 years, these are their stats. So this year, Damian Lillard, 18.3 points a game in those 4 games. He shot 15.5 field goals per game. He only made 5.5 of those field goals per game. His field goal percentage against the Pacers this season, 35.5%. Now, he would probably be better, more focused in the playoffs, would be an uptick. So you're talking about 18 to 20, maybe 24, 25. I don't think that's still enough to beat the Pacers with just those 2. I really don't. And I don't see where else besides AJ Green getting really hot or Gary Trent getting really hot. There's not much else wiggle room there. Like, there's nowhere to go. Damian has to do that. But then again, there might be games where Damian can't even do that because he's going to be limited, I'd imagine. Like, I don't think that Doc Rivers, maybe he is because Doc seems to really struggle coaching. I don't imagine a world where they're going to be playing Damian Lillard 34 to 35 minutes a game. He averaged 36.7 against the Pacers. That was the most minutes played by any Bucks player against the Pacers this season. I just don't imagine that Doc Rivers is that naive to think that Damian Lillard is going to come back firing on all cylinders, because the guy missed like the last 15 or something games. Like, they thought he was done for the year. And when you do that, he, like in other injuries, like maybe a back injury or something like that, like you might get some running in or light work on the treadmill or some yoga or whatever. But like, I'm pretty sure, and I don't know this for a fact because I'm not a doctor, but I'm pretty sure, and I don't know what Damian did, but when you get diagnosed with deep vein thrombosis and you have to go on blood thinners, I don't believe you're allowed any physical activity that increases your heart rate. So he's going to play Damian Lillard, right? Coming off a season where he thought he was going to be done for the year, where he played 58 games. He's 34 years old, going to be 35 in July. So he's going to play 36 right out of the gates. I doubt it. Like, that seems very risky. One, for his health, like the issue that he had with this clogged artery, but 2, a player at that age, you're just going to run him out there and hope he doesn't hurt his calf or, hamstring or something. Like, that's very dangerous. Like, he's got to have a ramp up. He's got to play physical. He's got to do all these things. So maybe he doesn't play in game 2. Maybe game 3 is more likely because that's not until Friday of this coming week. Like, they have a lot of breaks. The Pacers have a lot of days off, which is really good for this first series. They've got some really great days off. I think they've got some really nice breaks that benefit the Pacers because the Pacers are going to need less recovery time, I think, than the Bucks. The Bucks are much older. So, yeah, this all favors the Pacers. I imagine Dame, if I had to guess, he'd probably play 25, 30 minutes. I just don't see him playing that full amount that he would normally play. I imagine there would have to be some restrictions for the first couple of games. Like, it would just be so haphazard to really just throw a guy out there that's not been playing, that's had this life-threatening health issue, and then he's 34 years old. I mean, that's crazy. That's a lot of time missed. I mean, he's missed a couple of weeks of basketball. He's not out. He's not been physical, or he's not been active at all. So we'll see what he does. But then you kind of read these numbers and you're also like, wow, even if he takes a tick down, that's really bad. Like, imagine him, 15, 14 points a game. That's basically what Porter Jr. did. And so, like, and then he takes a spot in the rotation. He's horrible defensively. Like, he'll struggle tremendously. I think it actually benefits having Damian on, which it might be different. Lillard might guard like Aaron Nesmith, which then the Pacers can exploit. The Pacers have a lot of areas where they can exploit him, Damian Lillard, which I think is another thing that a lot of teams don't talk about. And I was listening to a lot of Bucks podcasts before jumping on here, and something that the Bucks podcast forgets to mention is the fact that you can stop Tyrese Halliburton all you want, but you see what happens when you do that. He scored 10 points. He had one of the worst offensive shooting nights that he's had in a long time, but he still had 10 points and 12 assists, and he was a plus 27. So, Tyrese is that kind of guy. I mean, he's like a John Stockton level where he doesn't really need to get his. He can just dish and dime and get people open. I think that's another thing too, is what won't show up in the stat sheet, except if you're looking for it from a Pacers perspective. And maybe you see it reflected in the amount of points and open shots that the other players get on the court around Tyrese Halliburton. How much space? I think Caitlin Clark did like this wonderful article where she broke down basically how open typically people are coming off of a Halliburton or like during a Halliburton assist. And it was like, at one point, I think it's like 9 feet. That's insane. Like, there are times, multiple times, many times, a lot of 75, 80% of the time that Halliburton's getting these guys open shots. They're like, there's defenders. They're not even close to him. Like, they're not even close to be able to defend. So it just breaks you down. I mean, he does things where he's at a historic level and turnover ratio. He passed John Stockton and Chris Paul for the amount of assist to turnover ratio, and like his ability to create and not give the ball up. Like, he gives up the ball maybe once or twice a game. That's incredible for a pass first point guard who has 12 to 15 assists a game, who can get 20 assists a game. Like, it's unheard of for this Pacer team, who was very young and turned the ball over quite a bit last year. They don't turn the ball over anymore. And if they do, they're not live. Like, they are not live ball turnovers. They are out of bound turnovers. They kick them off their legs. Like, or they're in good defensive position to recover from those turnovers, because they just don't give points off the turnover. They just don't. And in the playoffs, defense, turnovers, and rebounds, that'll win you a game 100% of the time. The offense has to be there, but those 3 things are probably the most important things in a playoff series. And the Pacers have done everything they can in these playoff series to limit those. It's going to be huge. I just feel like people underestimate the small things that win you ball games, not necessarily like the points that people average, like a Giannis, who's going to score 35 points a game against the Pacers in this series. And I think it'll be tied for, if they lose the series, it'll be the most points a player's ever averaged for a team that's been eliminated from the playoffs or something like that. Like, Giannis will get there. He'll beat Jordan's average, I believe. I think there's games coming. He might even get closer to 40. Like, he'll get 40. He's at 36 last game. So we'll see. But again, I bring that up as Damian Lillard. I mean, even looking at his 3-point percentage, 38.9%. Like, it's not over 40. 40 is great. 38 is good, but it's not great. He takes a lot of 3-point shots, 9 shots a game from 3-point land, and he makes 3.5 of them. That's closer to a 30% clip, 33% clip. Like, his shots, I mean, he takes a ton of 3-pointers, right? I mean, there's over half his shots, like 66% Like, I just he relies so much on the 3-point shot. And Andrew Nembhard, let's talk about Andrew Nembhard here. That's the difference. I mean, you can look at it anywhere you want. Andrew Nembhard eliminates people. I think the only person I've ever really seen him, well, two people, seen him struggle against two people. And they'll have to figure this out for a series coming up because they'll either face Boston or New York. He struggled against Jalen Brunson. And Jalen's not that much bigger than he is. They're actually pretty equivalent, I think, in size. But for some reason, he struggled more so on Jalen Brunson than Aaron Nesmith did. Aaron Nesmith ended up guarding him. Aaron Nesmith really causes Jalen Brunson an issue because he's bigger. And then Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown's a freak. he's incredible. He's so hard to stop. And Andrew Nembhard's made a lot of people that are really great look bad. Jaylen Brown's not one of them. But I mean, Nembhard's gone against the likes of Dame, James Harden, Ja Morant. Like, he stopped people like this. Steph Curry. He absolutely shut down Steph Curry. So Nembhard has this ability that I don't think many teams have. I think Oklahoma City has that ability where they can really dog you. I think Boston last year did, but Boston's just not healthy this year. And Boston's not playing as well as they did this year. New York doesn't really have that. Josh Hart's not really that. I think he wants to be that, but he's not that. I'm trying to think of other teams. Kawhi Leonard could be like that if he's healthy, but I don't think he's playing as high intensity defense that he used to. Cleveland, no. Like, I don't see anybody in Cleveland doing that, like a shutdown ball defender. So again, it's very limited for guys that or teams that just have this guy that just, I mean, that alone, it's not really put into his plus and minus too much, and it does because it does show up defensively on how much he stops the other star player. But like going into the game, you can almost say, well, I mean, Andrew Nembhard, I mean, he'll take away at least 8 points from your star players that he's guarding. So it's just, there's so many factors to this Damian Lillard being back and what it means for the Pacers, what it means for the Bucks. Because even if you go back to 2023, 2024, they played 5 games regular season because of the end season tournament. Dame did not play in one of these games against the Pacers. He only had 4 games played against them. Remember, the Bucks lost one of 5 regular season games, and then they lost the series 4-2 last year against the Pacers, which is still crazy. This team's going to probably have played 20 games between the two of them over the last 2 years after the series ends. But even then, Damian Lillard, 20 points a game, like solid. Good number 2. And Giannis Giannis went off on the Pacers last year, way more. Like, I feel like they've done a much better guard. Obviously, they've done a better job guarding him this year than they did last. But I think that was more because they had different options. I actually felt like having Chris Middleton and Malik Beasley at least gave the Pacers enough problems where you had to worry about other people. Where some of these lineups that these Bucks are running out, it's just like, they're like, oh, well, our bench is pretty good because that bench unit they put in at the end of the game with Giannis is really good. But that's usually just because Giannis is that good. You know, you factor in somebody else in with that bench core, and who's creating for that team? Ryan Rollins, like, it's not, if Giannis isn't going with that unit, it's not a great unit. It's only when Giannis is out there. So again, Dame, 20 points a game. Here's the other thing too, and here's why I brought up the 23-24, because even though his points averages are going up in those games, one thing that I will note, he shot 32.4% from the field in 23-24 against these Pacers, courtesy of Andrew Nembhard. 5.5 made, 17 attempted as far as field goals. 3-pointers, 2.3 made, 8.5 attempted, 26.5%. So the Andrew Nembhard effect is real. I don't think many people. It's funny because I was listening to a Bucks podcast. They kept calling him Namehard. Kind of like Dame and Nembhard, I guess, combined. I don't know, but it does seem that the Pacers are never going to get credit for anything they're doing right. It's always going to be well, what is Giannis not doing well? Or, man, they missed Dame. It's never going to be about, well, the Pacers eliminated every single player, but not name Giannis. Like, there's just so much credit where credit is due for the way that the Pacers played defensively. But all of this doesn't happen without guys like Miles Turner and Andrew Nembhard. They're such game changers. Aaron Nesmith, too, you can put in that category. Those three, And I would even put Pascal in there just because he does a really good job. Even though Giannis gets what he wants, there are times where he does struggle some with Pascal because Pascal's a lengthier guard, or sorry, not guard, a lengthier guy guarding him. Whereas I think when Miles guards him, he's just too quick for Miles. Whereas I feel like Pascal actually feels like he can actually defend him somewhat, and he was with that way Toronto. He's done pretty well with Giannis. So again, all that to say, don't let the Dame conversation get too out of hand. Just because I feel like there's a lot of aspects that go into that, and while he does add a different level and another layer to what the Bucks want to do and what they probably can do, and he might win them a game or two, but I just feel like he doesn't do enough for me to really say that he's why that the Bucks would lose this series, because I do still feel like with the and I love what Zach Lowe said, because he was basically listening to the Zach Lowe podcast and he was talking about, he's like, well, if Dame doesn't play, I got the Pacers in 6, and when Dame comes back though, I've got the Pacers in 6. So which 6 is what I had it at, and I know it's difficult to win on the road, but I actually do have confidence that the Pacers can win one on the road in Milwaukee to at least steal it. But if the Pacers play like this the rest of the series, it could be a 5-game series. I could totally see that. So we'll see. We'll see what Dame does, and I could be wrong. Dame could go unworldly and Giannis unworldly, and then I'll apologize, because that's not something that I would expect, because I just don't think that can happen. And even if they do, that's a tough ask to find a number 3 that's going to be able to take you to that next, because I think Dame and Giannis could go for 35 and 25, and I still think that this team could be in some trouble, because I just feel like there's too many things that the Bucks don't do. And with how bad Dame, I keep doing that, how bad Dame is defensively, like that just takes away from some of what he does in the offensive end, because he just doesn't play defense. Like he can't stay with Andrew Nemhard. He's not going to be able to guard Tyrese. He definitely can't guard Neesmith. And then, I mean, Miles and Pascal are out of the question. There's no way that he can guard them. So I don't know. It's a very interesting conversation. I think it sparks a lot of intrigue just because of how good Damian Lillard is in big games. But if you look at what the Pacers have done, and if you take I know Bucks people will bet, would maybe counter, or national people go, well, Dame had 30 some odd points, 35 odd points last season per game against the Pacers in the postseason. Well, that's because that's all they had was Dame and Chris. So of course, I mean, Dame is a high volume, shoot the ball every time I get it kind of guy. And that takes away from a lineup. So we'll see how that chemistry is with Dame coming back. I don't know what the adjustments will be as far as that's concerned, but definitely an intriguing storyline, as game 2 is just around the corner. Let's take a look at what the Pacers did in this game 1 summary. So what did the Pacers do to finally really just steal the show and take this one from the Bucks? And it started right away, I think. I mean, Miles Turner, that first 3 that he hit was so important with his confidence. And Miles is such a confidence going shooter, but he's a great shooter. Like Miles Turner's a great shooter, 40% from 3. Like he's that kind of guy where you can rely on him to hit 2 of his 3, or 3 of his 6, or 3 of his 7, 4 of his 7 every night. Like you can just count on, even when he starts 0 for 2 or 0 for 3, he'll hit the next 3. He's just that kind of guy. And if you leave him space, he will make such a difference. And you saw exactly what's going to happen in this series, where they're going to really struggle with Miles Turner. And this is where I think Doc Rivers and the Bucks that's another thing too. I think what so many people and what I've listened to as far as the NBA and ESPN especially, and then any Bucks podcast, and some of the Pacers podcasts have done it, or maybe even question, like, what does Doc Rivers do with the rotations? Something about that too. Like you don't just you don't just change rotations mid playoff. Like you don't, not effectively. Like you can try it, but it typically just doesn't go well. And I think a lot of that is like there's so much that has to go right, and and changing your rotations, because people have to gel. Like for instance, AJ Green shot the ball really well. Gary Trent shot the ball pretty well. Always a thorn in the Pacers' side. And Kyle Kuzma had set a record for one of the worst NBA playoff games I think I've ever seen. I think they call it a trillion or a billion because he throws up zeros all the way across the board. He had 0 shots, 0 points, 0 assists, 0 rebounds. It was a 0, 0, 0, 0, 0 across the board. He did nothing. It was like he went out there and shot the ball a couple times. That was it. I think he shot the ball twice. It was bad. Like, I don't think I've ever seen anything like that. That was awful. I think Tony Snell did it years back, but this was brutal. And Pacers were happy when they traded for Kuzma because it meant the exit of Chris Middleton, who has always been a Pacer killer. But that's always been that way. I feel like Kyle Kuzma's not really, he's kind of a detriment to teams. He's never really been much of a positive. He score a lot. Like, if you give him every shot that he possibly wants, like if you let him shoot 25 times, he's going to make, he's going to hit at least 30% of those. So of course he's going to score in those volumes, but it is interesting that that the Bucks people, the media, even the national media are like, well, all Doc Rivers has to do is change these rotations up and get Dame back and the Bucks are fixed. That's not how that works. There is so much about changing rotations like that, because let's just say, for instance, you do change that rotation. AJ Green goes to the starting lineup. Dame comes back, goes into the starting lineup. Let's just say they get greedy and throw Gary Trent back in there too. So you're taking out Kuzma, Ryan Rollins. Why am I blanking on his name? I'm blanking. What the heck? Sorry. What in the world? I'm blanking on this person's name. Taurean Prince. So you take out Taurean Prince, Taurean Prince, Ryan Rollins, not Ryan Reynolds. He's Deadpool. And you take out Kyle. So you're putting Kyle Kuzma on the bench, Ryan Rollins on the bench, and then you're putting in, so you got Porter Jr. on the bench still. So what would be your plan then? Like, sure, the starting five does well, but then when those guys come out, you're putting in, to close a half, you're putting in and then Giannis is going to have to come out, and then into that second unit, the starters won't have an AJ Green out there. So it'll be Gary Trent, it won't be Gary Trent. It'll be Porter Jr. It'll be Kyle Kuzma, Rollins. Like, you're relying on them to then fix the benches. That's my confusion, is even if you change these rotations, it still means those players have to go somewhere. It's, while AJ Green might get some more run, but also then you have this idea of these guys that are bench guys aren't typically used to getting those starter minutes. And while you do have an elite rotation in that rotation that includes Giannis, Gary Trent, Porter Jr., AJ Green, and then Bobby Portis, like, that's been an elite lineup. But what does that do for you come the fourth quarter when those guys are gassed? When Bobby Porter's played 40 some minutes or 30 some minutes, maybe overtime 40 minutes, or you're looking at AJ Green, who doesn't play that many minutes, running all over the place because the Pacers are a fast-paced team. Do you really want AJ Green running for 30 minutes and then trying to hit some threes late in the game with then a focus from Andrew Nembhard or Aaron Nesmith, rather than the players, say, like, Benedict Mathurin, TJ McConnell, Obi Top? Like, you see, like, that just doesn't, like, those don't add up. Rotation, those players don't just disappear. They go somewhere else. Like, they go into a different part of the game. I just don't think that necessarily fits. Then you have the aspect of the fact that when Damian does come back, you're then having this elite rotation, right, that they've talked about. So who goes to the bench? Is it Porter Jr.? Probably not. So you're leaving him out there, ball dominant. Gary Trent, who loves to get his own, you're leaving him out there. So you're probably taking out AJ Green and putting Dame in, but that's a pretty small lineup. And probably about even with Neesmith's probably bigger than all of them. At least stronger than most of them. Porter Jr. is not really known for his defensive prowess. Neither is Gary Trent. Then you got Dame, who can't defend. Then you're going to have Bobby Portis out there too, and he wants the ball. He wants issues. So you got 5 guys that want shots. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me why Doc or how Doc would make that all fit. So ultimately, I think that causes more of a headache for Doc Rivers, who doesn't make adjustments anyway, who will probably just stay with what's going, right? I don't think he changes much of anything. If anything, maybe that unit, you start to see them earlier in the fourth quarter. That would be my guess. If you're going to go to that unit, they'll probably go to it end of third, beginning of fourth, and try to run that, especially as the series goes further and further. They'll try to run that lineup out there, that rotation. But again, Dame's going to have to replace one of them. And then I think the defense drops tremendously. So you no longer have that positive plus minus, where this plus minus, this team was like 17 or something like that. It was one of the best lineups in the NBA for like the last month. This lineup they were running out there, like better than anybody in the league. So it's funny to me when people are just like, well, just change the starters. That's not, you're going to go change 3 starters in a playoff series. That doesn't typically go well, because then you destroy the confidence of the guys you took out, and then you put them somewhere else where I imagine them going up against the bench. If Obi Toppin's going off and Benedict Mathurin, who's going to match them? Like, at least when you mix in starters and the guys that have been on the bench, like, at least you got that. But if you have to spell, Porter Jr. and Gary Trent, if you have to spell them minutes along with Dame, then Giannis is out there running around with Ryan. Like, then you got the same problem. Like, you got the same issue. So I don't, especially when the Pacers are this deep, I don't know how the Bucks fix this, except for as soon as you can possibly do it, pull the trigger and make those guys play maybe that last quarter. But then again, you're going to wear down because the Pacers are just going to keep running. So I don't know what you do when you're the Bucks. And I'm just trying to look at it from a non-biased perspective. But again, changing rotation, that's always funny to me, because I'm like, well, I would never want Rick Carlisle to go, this isn't working. Let's take out Neesmith and let's take out Nembhard. Let's put some infusion of Jarris Walker and Benedict Mathurin in there because we need more length. Like, I just don't understand. Like, I never would want that to happen. But I guess when you're desperate, you do a lot of things. All right. Game 1 summary. Like I said, I got long-winded and on a tangent there, but the biggest thing was Miles Turner hitting that first 3. The Bucks did answer and go on a 6-0 run, but then that was countered by another run by the Pacers. The Pacers end up going up, I think it was 15-7 at one point, and that was what causes Doc to call a timeout, because the Pacers on a long run, and they really, 15-8, 12-2 run for the Pacers as they go to 7:50 in the first quarter, and then later on in the first quarter, Pacers are 12 of 17 from the field, led by Nembhard's 8 points. So with about 2.5 minutes left in the first quarter, the Pacers had an 8-point lead and really looked to be taking advantage of what the Bucks could not do defensively. And this is something that actually gets worse, I feel like, with Damian Lillard coming back. I think your defense gets worse when you don't have Ryan Rollins, because Ryan Rollins actually did a pretty decent job on Tyrese Halliburton. He kept him at least away from getting his shot. He did not get it. I think once the offense started to break down other places, that's when Tyrese got more involved, which I actually think when I'm thinking about this, right, you put Damian back in, let's just say that they're going to put Dame straight up for Ryan Rollins, and that's it. Kyle Kuzma's still out there. Taurean Prince, who's not a great defender, he's okay. And then you've got Giannis and Brook. And that's a really bad defensive lineup, like really bad. And the Pacers don't change at all. The Pacers actually will get more open shots because Damian Lillard cannot defend anyone. Kyle Kuzma cannot defend anyone. Giannis Antetokounmpo is a great defender, but he will have to make up for what Brook Lopez lacks. And Brook Lopez cannot guard anything that's not that's not inside that box in the paint. Like, Brook Lopez is pretty useless against Miles Turner. I just don't know how this would necessarily push, because there is going to be such an emphasis on attacking Damian Lillard and Kyle Kuzma from the Pacers that you're going to see, and then attention on Miles Turner, where they're going to have to shade over to try to defend in the paint with Giannis. Like, Giannis is going to have to leave Pascal. Then Pascal's open for a mid-range, or Andrew Nembhard gets open on a pick from a mid-range. Miles Turner pops out and hits threes on Brook Lopez because Brook's not going to go out there. Like, Brook cannot keep up with Tyrese Halliburton on a screen. So if Tyrese decides to go, I'm going past Brook, see you later, he's got to try to at least recover. And that leaves Miles Turner with a small. And then you also have the issues sometimes with Pascal and Tyrese when Tyrese would get picked. when Pascal would go up and pick for Tyrese. Like, there are so many defensive issues that's something that the Pacers kind of ran into with the Celtics. They last year they ran into some issues of like when you do switch or when you do try to defend, there's so many weaknesses because Tatum is much bigger than Neesmith and he's much quicker than Pascal. So that's kind of a weird matchup. Jaylen Brown just owned Andrew Nembhard. Derek White is very difficult to guard for Tyrese. And Al Horford was hitting shots. And if Porzingis is out there, that's difficult to guard for Miles. Like, there's just so many aspects to the Celtics last year that the Pacers really struggled with. I feel like it's the same thing with the Bucks this year. They're not a good defensive team. I just feel like they really will struggle. And then those bench players are not any better. So it's like you're not getting relief like you were with Pat Bev. Like when Pat Bev came out, he was a much better defender. He's a top level defender, but they don't have that. So when Ryan Rollins comes in, maybe that's, your best defender coming off the bench to join Giannis, but he looked shell shocked. I mean, he started pretty well, but then every shot he took, it seemed like every shot Ryan Rollins took, it was just that's off. And you could see Dame coaching him like, hey, let's try to get other people involved. Maybe don't shoot as much, which is funny coming from the guy that would shoot anytime that it's open. It's funny. It's just the Bucks have so many different aspects that can go wrong. Where the Pacers, again, and you might be able to credit this one to Chad and the gang. I feel like they've made such a good Chad and Kevin and Rick, like they've made such great moves to keep this team together that this continuity, this is so difficult to just, really appreciate, I think, because you look at some of these teams and you're like, well, they kept a lot of their guys from last year, but they've got some new pieces that don't really understand playoff and how they work together because everything's heightened in the playoffs. There's more focus on different players. There's more focus defensively. There's more focus in the offensive end. Teams become more efficient in shooting. They get more motivated, sometimes through the season, you just kind of go through the motions of the season. We're in the playoffs, man. You get nitpicked for like, that's when your weaknesses are exposed. And if I'm looking at this Bucks and Pacers series, the Bucks have way more of those weaknesses that get exposed than the Pacers can. The Pacers are a top 10 defense right now. The Pacers are a top 10 offense, maybe top 5 when they're playing like they did when they're shooting that efficiently. They're definitely the most efficient shooting team, I would say, aside maybe from the Bucks in this postseason. Maybe you could give OKC some of that when they're on. But the Pacers are just so efficient and so high octane and fast and young and quick and make good decisions. They don't turn the ball over. They've rebounded better. They don't give up as many offensive boards, especially to the Bucks. Like other teams they'll struggle with, right? I think with Boston, that'll be a key emphasis is to rebound the basketball if they got to Boston. Cleveland as well. Cleveland can rebound the heck out of the basketball. So I worry about that. But there's just so many things that the Pacers can do offensively that are just a detriment to what the Bucks are trying to do. So, after that first quarter, it really was all Pacers for a very long time. They go 5 of 12 on 3-pointers. This is after the first quarter. They're 33-25 Pacers lead. They come out. Gary Trent starts to heat up, but the Pacers weather that storm pretty well. Trent was 3 of 3, 6 points. Pascal then has 12 points. It's 41-34, and that's when it really started to take off and balloon. Pacers fouling Antetokounmpo. Giannis not hitting free throws, 4 of 10 with 5:25 left in the second quarter. Tyrese Halliburton, he gets his first points. He starts to get more involved, and once he starts to score, teams start to focus a little bit more on that. He gets other guys involved, and that's when you just started to see everything. And Nembhard was like this early on, and Miles and Neesmith. Everything was open. Like, it didn't matter where they went. Everything was open. Pascal had 12 points, Nembhard 10 with 2:45 left in the second quarter. It ballooned to a 15-point lead at that point. And then at halftime, they went up 24 points. They started hitting 3-pointers. Nembhard ends the half, 15 points. Pascal 12. Benedict Mathurin with 11. He got going in that second quarter. Got his first points early in that second quarter. Maybe it's first quarter. I think it was first quarter, which was 61% from the field. The Pacers absolutely dominating the Bucks. The only person that had anything going for the Bucks was Giannis with 19 points, but he was only 5 of 11 from free throw line and had 5 boards. Bucks were 2 of 16 from the 3-point arc. At some point, I think they were 3 of 24 in the third. Pacers extend their lead in the third quarter. They get up by 27. I think 28 might have been the game high, but 27, 8:41 left in the third quarter. Pascal poked the ball away, got a 3 on the end. This is when I thought they were just going to absolutely blow the doors off of them. And they kind of did for a while there. But then towards the end of the third, beginning of the fourth, it really started to get kind of an uneasy feeling because the Pacers of what they've done in the past. And, as much as experience that they got last year and as much as people want to tell me that, like, yeah, but they got to learn sometime. This is still a really young team. Like, this is still the second year for Tyrese in the playoffs, and Nemhard and Neesmith's not really played much, but 2 years in the playoffs. Like, this is still a very young team. So things happen, right? But the good thing is when the Pacers struggle now, it's not that they're turning the ball over. Typically, if somebody says, Logan, the Pacers are struggling, they're not keeping a 20-point lead, what do you think's going wrong without watching the game? I can point to a couple things. They get stagnant. Tyrese gets stagnant. He starts to shoot threes and not break down the defense. A lot less pick and roll. Like, either Miles is out of the game or they're not as involved with the pick and roll. The team goes to a zone maybe, and they're having a harder time there. But we'll talk about zone because they didn't have any problems with this zone today or yesterday. Another thing that goes wrong typically is they do start to turn the ball over, but they don't often do that, at least in the second half of this season. Like, they become historic in the way that they've been able to keep on the ball. So I wouldn't say that this second half, like if you came to me today and said this is the game they struggled in, I wouldn't say turnovers because they haven't been doing that lately. I would say stagnant on offense, Benedict Mathurin shooting a lot of one-on-one between Pascal and Tyrese. I would say maybe the bench unit is in that struggled tremendously in the second half. Wasn't the case in this game as much. Or I would point to the fact that they're just getting beat on the offensive glass. And really none of that was true except for the stagnant. Like, they were very stagnant. And, a lot of that's Mathurin, a lot of that's Tyrese, a lot of that's Pascal. There's got to be something where when they get like this, and I've tried to figure this out because I felt like Mathurin would be this one that would be able to do this, but he's not really shown that. He gets a lot of shot happy moments. But I still think he is the one that can break this. I will say Obi Toppin and TJ McConnell have been good at being able, because TJ is not looking to score. I would say TJ's pretty good at this too, especially the way he played yesterday. TJ's very good at just moving the basketball. And I would say Nemhard too can do this, but Mathurin's the one that really interests me. And if Nemhard can get to this level again, like playoff Nemhard comes back, which he did last game, I feel like if he's really going to play like this in big games, maybe this is where this is some of the improvement they can make. Get the ball to Mathurin, TJ, or Nemhard, and just let them get the ball to places. Meaning Benedict and Nemhard can get to the rack pretty easily. Like, I would say they can get it there 70% of the time that they take off towards the rim. Then they can dish, score, get fouled, whatever it might be, get some points on the board. Good free throw shooters. Not, Andrew's not as great, but Benedict's a fantastic free throw shooter. Get him to the line. TJ, same kind of thing. TJ can get those middies, those little low post goals that are the baskets that he makes. It always shocks me that he gets the ball over some of these people. TJ also moves the ball a ton, and he's quick, and he just gets the ball. He's not somebody that's going to make the ball stop a whole lot. So ball stopping is just not good for this Pacer team. And Benedict Mathurin is a ball stopper. He's always been. He's always going to be. But he's gotten better at distributing, and he's gotten better at getting to the rim, and he's a great foul shooter. I feel like this is really where he could excel. He just needs to figure out, how do I get there? Is it through picks? Is it through getting the ball, posting up somebody? Like, I'd love to see him maybe post up some more people, see how that works. Like, I think he's strong enough to where he could get around people, maybe not even post up people, but kind of just front up against somebody, get up against somebody and get in an attacking position at the elbow, like something like that. Like, I want to see that. And a lot of times that's when you'll see their zones thrown at them, is when they get into these lineups that have Tyrese, Benedict, Pascal, and Toppin in them. Like, the bench unit plus Tyrese and Pascal, those tend to be when you see zones, because they don't have Miles, who's going to really stretch you out. Miles can really cause problems when he's out there for a zone. And it's usually when he's off the floor. The way Toppin's been shooting lately, he could be that guy. But again, sometimes he gets a little too shot happy too. So that's my only complaint that really I had with the Pacers. I mean, that's really, and we'll get to improvements that they can make, but that's one of them. Just get the ball going. Like, just, and it's so easy for me to sit there and say it because I've been a victim of this too. But like, you get this big lead and you're like, let's just stretch it out, hit some threes, and then it's really over. Just get to the foul line. I mean, there's times where I just feel like they can get to the foul line easier than they do because they got so many good players that can get to the rim. Yeah, 17-point lead at the end of the third, but that was right after AJ Green had hit 3 of 4 Bucks 3-pointers. That was huge. The fact that they hit 4 3-pointers in the third quarter to kind of end it, like that was a big time. Those were big time shots by the Bucks. And looking back at it, you weren't like they were spread out enough where they weren't like back to back to back, but like they were close enough to where like that just it kept pressure on Indy, and Indy was just gone stagnant at that point. They just hadn't scored. I think they went 8 straight possessions without scoring, and you just can't do that in the playoffs. Like, and that's again, and people say that like don't blame it on their youth, but it's still their youth. Those guys, the guards have to figure it out because you can't rely on Pascal to do that. And Miles isn't somebody that you can get the ball into and he just starts posting people up just to get you some points. Like he's just not that kind of big. So I don't know. It's definitely something that I think is a weakness of the Pacers at times. They get too stagnant after they've played so well in moving the basketball. It's almost like they forget what had gotten them to that point. What else? So yeah, third quarter, 93-76, 17-point lead. That felt pretty good for the fourth. But then the Bucks did it again. They got it down to about 12 points, and then the Pacers started to kind of push them back a little bit after AJ Green hit a couple threes. AJ Green's going to do that. I think he's kind of similar to the fact that like the Bucks can do that, the Celtics can do that, the Knicks can do that. Like all the good teams in the Eastern Conference can do this, where they hit a couple threes and put you right back in it. But you want to see how a team responds out of that. And the Pacers, like last season, responded right back with their own punch. And that's when Miles Turner hits a huge three. And that's when all the chirpy stuff started happening with like a minute and a half left when the game was pretty much all but over because Miles had hit the three. There was a timeout by Doc Rivers. And then that's when Dame and Tyrese basically just yell at each other a lot. Tyrese and Pascal. And Pascal gets hit with a tech. Dame gets hit with a tech. Dame pretty much just says, I'll see you later in this series, maybe Tuesday, but probably Friday. Definitely. I don't know. Whenever I come back, we're going to beat you up. Basically, I can take you. And that prompted a tweet from Pacers legend Evan Turner. He tweeted that Dame could beat up Tyrese with one leg or something like that. And I was like, dude, Evan Turner wasn't he the one that got beat up by Lance Stevenson in a practice or something? All right. So he destroyed that team that year. That was awful. He was awful. Where was I? Okay. So that's the summary. Pacers win. Tyrese Halliburton struggled to shoot the basketball really for the first time in like months. Like he just, and you know, what's weird is I don't really think he that struggled that much because the Bucks were like, oh man, he was awful scoring the basketball. And then there's a bunch of people obviously that tweet, oh, Tyrese Halliburton 3 for 13 and he didn't hit any threes, 0 for 7 from 3. This is your star player, this is your franchise. But if you look at what he did in the game, 12 assists, right? 1 turnover. one turnover. Out 12 assists, 1 turnover. And there was a lot more setting up of that he didn't get credit for an assist. But man, does he break down defenses. He was a plus 27. He was the second best on the team behind Pascal Siakam at 20, plus 28. Miles Turner, a plus 24. Andrew Nembhard, plus 23. Aaron Nesmith, that was actually shocking to me. He was only a plus 8, but he does get into some of those he gets into some of those rotations with like McConnell and Toppin in them. And those rotations can be brutal sometimes. Obi Toppin was not good in this game, but we'll get to those player grades. He was a minus 16. TJ McConnell, minus 3, but I thought he played better than that. Benedict Mathurin, plus 9. Jarris Walker, plus 4. Let's talk about the keys, the game, and then we'll talk about improvements, and then we'll talk player grades because I want to break it down player by player. We'll go with the box scores on that section too, and then we will preview game 2 and what I think the Pacers need to do to leave Indianapolis with a 2-0 lead. So let's get into the keys of the game that won them game 1. The first key that I want to talk about why the Pacers won game 1, the Pacers defense, 98 points for the Milwaukee Bucks. This defense has been on a burner. I cannot believe how good they look defensively, especially yesterday. They look like a completely different team. And I'm telling you, if they play defense like the rest, or this, if they play defense like this the rest of the series, it's going to be a lot of trouble for the Eastern Conference just because their offense, I don't really have much faith that they're going to lose any kind of confidence in their offense. Their defense has always been suspect, but at least this year they were a top 15 defense efficiently in their efficient ratings and in their defensive ratings in the playoffs and in the past 30 some games post All-Star break. They've been one of the best 10 defenses in the league. Yesterday, they played defense like one of the top 5 defenses in the league. They were phenomenal on the defensive end. Their defensive rating was 100, which is fantastic. You're going to beat pretty much every team that you face if you've got that good of an offense, if you keep teams to 100 points per game. So defensive rating, again, how many points that a team will score in 48 minutes is typically how that is measured, or per 100 possessions. 48 minutes, but 100 points per game is what is expected if the Pacers keep playing at this defensive level. Pacers, again, were getting everything they wanted on the offensive end, but I felt like they were getting everything they wanted on the defensive end. Andrew Nembhard had a number of deflections and a couple steals, I think. He had, let me check the box score because I can't. Yeah, a couple steals. He had 2. One I remember specific. No, sorry, I remember both of them. One of them was somebody wasn't paying attention to like a passing lane that they had after I think it was a pick, and Andrew Nembhard went over and stole it. Then he came over from the backside after I believe one of the wingers was trying to get it into the middle of almost like a zone, and Andrew Nembhard came from the backside. And when I think Giannis was getting some help on him, he threw it into the middle and came in behind Brook Lopez and took it away before Brook could get to it. And it just heads up plays like that. Like he got into so many passing lanes. He did this last year too in the postseason. And actually Tyrese had been doing this in the season as well. As they get into the passing lanes, or they get into the lanes where guys are just trying, and just annoying enough to knock it out of bounds, deflect it away, get it back to a Bucks player, knock it into the feet of the Pacers. They just do so many great things defensively where they knock the ball away. Benedict Mathurin had a good knock away from Kyle Kuzma when he kind of did that raise of his leg, and it looked like he was almost inadvertently tripped. When he inadvertently tripped Benedict Mathurin. But yeah, they I don't know. They just did so many things defensively. A guy that I really want to mention here is Jarris Walker. Jarris Walker is such a difference maker in the way that he just makes some of the small plays. And this is so important for a guy that's getting his first experience as an NBA player in the NBA playoffs. He played right around 18 minutes, 17 minutes and 25 seconds. So that's a good portion of the game for Jarris Walker. He really didn't impact this game. I mean, their rebounding was good, which is not typically the case for the Pacers. But you had 1, 2, 3, 4 guys. 4 guys? 1, 2. Sorry. No, that's defensive rebounds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys with 5 rebounds or more. So Aaron Nesmith had 6 rebounds, Siakam 7, Miles Turner 5, Halliburton 7. You had Benedict Mathurin 5, Jarris Walker 5. So again, just so many little things that they did. And it was such a huge change from the Jarris Walker we had seen. There was just no confidence there. And honestly, I think if he played with this kind of level of confidence and played this well throughout the season, this would have looked like a whole different season for Jarris Walker and the Pacers. But I'm glad it's here. I'm glad that we're finally seeing what Jarris Walker can do, because I think there's just so many elements to his game that are different than anything that the Pacers have on any other player. He's 21 years old, so he's still very, very young, but he is incredibly gifted in a lot of different areas, including being able to shoot the three-pointer. He hit another three-pointer. He has been on fire from 3. He hit his only one that he took yesterday. He took 2 shots. One was like a fadeaway where the shot clock was running down and he got it deflected, which it wasn't a horrible, like it had to come. It was late in the shot clock, but it got deflected. And it was one of those shots you kind of like, yeah, you should have just drove, because he had the moment where he was just dribbling around and then he settles on this jump shot, which he's made those before in the season and he's got that ability to make those. but it just wasn't a great shot for Jarris. However, everything else was a plus, plus, plus. He had a steal. There was one time where Bobby Porter had it on the post, and Bobby Porter, again, trying to back down the young gun as Bobby would, and as he should. He was trying to back down Jarris, and he took one dribble, and Jarris realized what he was doing. He's trying to back him in. So Jarris took his long arm and his right arm, and Bobby's looking over his left. And all of a sudden, his arm comes in and knocks the ball, and Bobby's watching it go flying across to, I think it was Halliburton who ended up with it. But it was a phenomenal, and we see this all the time. Jarris does this at least once a game where he gets somebody where they think they've beat him or they think they've got him, and it all of a sudden the ball is no longer there because he's poked it away and it's gone down the other direction. So kudos to Jarris Walker because of how great he has been. I mean, he really has been a difference maker for the Pacers in these last 15 games that he's played, and now in the postseason he's making a difference. He has his stamp on it, and when he brings down a rebound, and there was actually a rebound that he didn't bring down necessarily to himself. He kind of he brought it down, but with authority to the fact that he was trying to get it away. I think it was Bobby Portis or maybe Giannis that was trying to get up to it, and he did one of those things where he caught it up at the peak of his jump, and because when he was trying to gather it, he flung it and it went back behind him. And I think Toppin or somebody got to it, and was able to save it. But I mean, he's freakishly athletic. I mean, he can probably out rebound everybody on this team and the Bucks team, and maybe anybody. I mean, he is that athletic. He can jump. He is strong physically for a 21-year-old. He is a solid person. He did give Giannis a few times where Giannis was like, "What in the world?" Which you don't see often from especially from a younger guy. But Giannis hit him a couple times, and there was one time he knocked the ball away, and then there was another time where he fouled Giannis. The one time where he fouled Giannis, he had it. I mean, he totally had it, but I think Giannis had just gotten the wrist over the ball enough to where it hit him on the back of the wrist. Because otherwise, had Giannis not kind of gotten away from him like that, sorry, I'm on the YouTube channel trying to act out, and people in the audio are like, "What is he doing?" He took the ball where he kind of knew the contact was coming, so he kind of curled himself up because he knew Jarris was going to try to get into him. And it was enough to where his wrist was over the ball enough to where Jarris had no point but to hit the hand. And they got the foul. They got it right. But I thought he had him. I thought he was going to get a Giannis strip, which would have been great confidence for the young fella. But again, it's all about confidence with the young players. And we saw this with Ben Shepherd last year. Ben Shepherd was on fire from three. It was like he hit half his threes that he took. He hit 2 or 3 per game. He's just lighting it up. Unfortunately, Ben's getting the coach's decision, DNP. But I think Jarris, again, every time I watch him, I think about the future of what he could be. And as Pascal starts to get older, as he starts to kind of mold into this, he could play a 4-3, even a 2 at times. He can even handle the ball at times. I've seen him where he's taking the ball up the floor, and he looks, especially when you get those garbage minutes, he'll be the point guard. He'll take the ball. And I know they usually give that to the player that's got the most experience. They'll give the guy the ball with those garbage time minutes. But even then, he looks comfortable because he passes well enough and he handles well enough to be at the point at times. He's very Pascal-esque in the way that he can take the ball from the top, from half court, and dribble it all the way into the rim and make a nice move. But he's stronger than Pascal will be, and he's definitely more athletic than Pascal. So I am all in on Jarris Walker. As you can tell, I just gushed about him, and he only played the 17 minutes in this postseason. But he just looks so good, and I love the confidence building. He needed a game like this, because the more you get comfortable, the more good plays you make, the more positive steps you take forward, the ones backwards don't hurt as much, right? So that shot that he took wasn't a great shot. He knew that, and I think he knew that he got himself into that situation where he dribbled it a little bit too much when he could have kicked it, or he just needed to make a move as quickly as bigger guys like that in the post. Just make the move quick, because that oftentimes you're going to score. It's when you start to hold the ball that's when you get more susceptible to a guy over and double teaming you, or getting the ball deflected, or getting too late in the shot clock's a disaster. So yeah, it felt like that was the only step backwards, but because he had so many positive things. And then there were 2 passes that he made. And this is what I was texting my dad and my brother, because they were watching. And I said, in these zones, and this was early on when Jarris was on there, because there was a couple times early where they struggled somewhat with the zone. Like they got late in the shot clock. Luckily, they got out of it. But early on, I was like, if they ever struggle with the zone and Jarris Walker is in, he is the perfect person to put up at the free throw line or in the middle of that zone because he passes so well, left and right handed, and he dribbles well. And that shot right there is money usually for him, that he causes people to come out to get him, and sometimes could warrant a double team. So, those guards kind of come back in and crash on him. And then you've got the big come up from behind him to try to stop him from getting those easy shots. And that's when he's so dangerous because you got the wings that can cut in, you got the guard that can cut around and hit a three. So yeah, there's so many things that Jarris can do that I'm excited to see what the future holds in the future of these series, because I do feel like he will have a huge impact. Bucks again, 24.3% from three. Giannis with just 1 assist. He had been the facilitator in the last month. He had averaged like 10.3 assists per game in the last month, and that's been without Damian Lillard. But they only held him to 1, which means he was not facilitating because he's not really that great of a passer, but he had been passing it pretty well, which has always been a flaw of his. He's just never been like the facilitator that they really needed him to be, like a LeBron or a Jokic. But he's gotten to that level recently. He just didn't do it against the Pacers in this one, but that could be a result of them just not hitting shots either. Andrew Nembhard, Jarris Walker, we already mentioned them both. They're just game changers. They absolutely change the aspect of every game. Another key to this game as to why they won is Pascal Siakam looking rested. He hit his shots. He hit his threes. They were online. There was only one shot that hit the bottom, clanked the bottom of the backboard from 3. That was like, oh my. But other than that, I mean, 10 of 15, he's 66.7% from the from 2 points, 2-point field goals, and then a 3 of 5 from 3-point range, 60%. He hit both his foul shots, which he really struggled to do last season in the postseason. He really struggled from the line. Andrew Nembhard, excellent start on both ends. His offense looks great. That was very important. He had really struggled to shoot the ball this season, but he went 8 of 13. He was hitting all those mid-range shots that were so killer last year in the playoffs against the teams like the Knicks and the Celtics. And then he went 1 of 3 from 3-point range, and he was stepped back into one of his favorite spots, which is like the left side of that 3-point arc, but like a couple steps back off the 3-point arc. It's a deep 3 that he hits, but he loves those threes where he kind of steps back into his left hand and then just fires it from deep. And a lot of the defenders, because he's not really a great 3-point shooter, he's okay. But it's like when those happen, it's always kind of like this, like that's his spot, isn't it? Because then he looks so smooth when he goes into that. Because other times he kind of looks like he winds up and it's like, hope this goes well. He struggles some, but yeah, this one was like a no doubter. He stepped back in that spot he got into with the Knicks when he hit that deep 3. It's just his spot on the floor, and he loves it. And he stepped back into it. There's nobody around. It was like, and he buried it, and that was right at the half, I believe, when he hit that, which sent it to 27. Place went nuts. What else? Miles continuing to hit big shots, huge. I think I talked about it. But Miles Turner, 4 of 6 from 3-point range. That's massive. If he does that, Pacers are very difficult to beat. Turnovers do not come from the players on the Pacers, 5 total. That's insane. Like, to only turn the ball over 5 times when the defense is at high level as it is in the playoffs is incredible. And they've done this all season, so it's not like it's truly that surprising. But in the playoffs, I was expecting at least a tick up. But man, they just do not turn the ball over. And that's all Tyrese Halliburton. I mean, he really takes care of the basketball as much as he's distributed. Bench looked better. TJ McConnell, most important thing he was doing, breaking down that zone defense they kept trying to get into. He just kept hitting mid-range shots, and they had to come out of it because it was so easy for him to penetrate it and get into the spots where he likes those little turnaround faders that he hits. And he kept hitting them. He was 5 of 7. He had 10 points. 11 points. Because he had the one free throw that he made. But he's just so, like, when he's doing that, he is so hard to defend because it looks like it's not coming, and then all of a sudden he just turns and quickly shoots it, and it's like, okay, well, that's hard to stop. Because then he gets guys that bite on it, they go up, and then he goes baseline and he hits people, cut into the basket or for 3, and he's just so difficult to defend when he's playing this well. And it's like he and Nemhard just have a whole different level that come when it comes to the postseason. Really, the only player of concern for me was Obi Toppin. But I mean, Obi Toppin, he did what he's going to do. He had 6 points, but he just wasn't. He wasn't the Obi Toppin that we've had in the last couple of games, and I don't think that's going to be typical for Obi. He tends to perform pretty well in these series. So I'm looking forward to him getting back on it, because other than that, that bench, I mean, you got what? You had McConnell with 11, you had Benedict with 13, 24. What, you had 24, 30, 32 points from the bench. Like, that's good. It's not like what they did last year. But I think that there's a lot of nights they'll get 40 to 45 with this unit, especially as Benedict gets more playoff experience. Because remember, this is his first playoff experience too. So that's a learning curve. He and Jarris. So you'll take that. Obi Toppin, I think, he's more of a 10-point kind of guy. So you missed some scoring there, but they didn't really need it with this game, because they took control early and they never really gave it up. They had some nice answers. They had, that stretch there in the third, beginning of the fourth, where it got a little rough, but improvements needed. Let's talk about it, and then we'll head into the player grades. Step on the gas. Don't get stagnant. Need to continue to do that throughout the series. Get to the rim. We talked about that. When the Pacers have let teams back in the game, it's usually because they do a lot of standing and dribbling. We just talked about that as well. And then limit second chances. Not so much against the Bucks did it happen, but there is this tendency with the Pacers that second chances just absolutely crushed them last year in the postseason, especially against the Knicks. I remember it because they just kept tapping the ball out. It's like, that's annoying. Get the rebound. Those 50-50 balls the Pacers had really struggled with, but they've been so much better at that in this second half of the season. So I'm looking forward to the improvements that they've made, because I think everything that they've done to make improvements have gone well. I think they just keep making those strides forward, and this is going to be a really good team for a couple of years beyond what we're doing this year too. Pacers player grades. I gave Miles Turner. You know what? I'm going to change that. I'm going to give Miles Turner an A-. I thought he did a tremendous job, arguably second best player on the floor for the Pacers besides Pascal. Pascal, A-. I'm going to give him an A-, just in the fact that, there is things that I hope he can do to kind of slow down Giannis a little bit more. I'm not sure you can. So that's not anything to kind of rag home on for Pascal. Like, there's not really much you can do, but that, and then he always ends up being in those lineups that do kind of go stagnant. And those are the times where I just wish that he had give me the ball. Like, just give me the ball. Let me figure it out. Because he does that sometimes, but then it just takes some bad shots, or, it doesn't look like normal Pascal. So he goes through some of those as times too. So even veteran players go through it. Tyrese, I am going to give a B+. I think it needs to come around. I think, he can do a better job there. Yeah, I could probably even give him an A- in this one too. He was just so good facilitating, like a complete floor general. Yeah, I'll give him an A-. I'll be a little nicer. I just feel like he could have done so much more. I don't feel like he could have done much more opening guys up for the chances they got. The reason why that ballooned to such a huge lead in that first half was because of him. It's all him. Like, he just absolutely destroys defenses because you have to worry about so much with him. I guess the A- would be get into the paint a little bit more. Don't get shot happy in the second half. I think that's what happened with him too. Nemhard, A-, could give him a little bit higher if I wanted to, but I think that's pretty fair. Again, once it got stagnant, he tended to be the one too, where it just, get the ball moving, get it going. But yeah, I think he was fine. I thought he did really well offensively. Neesmith, I'm going to go B-. He was kind of a non-factor except for defensively, I guess. He didn't really do much offensively. He hit a good 3, but to kind of ramp up the start of that game. But he was, he's Aaron Neesmith. He's solid. Like, that's what you want out of a fourth or fifth option in that moment. Because again, the Pacers options always change depending on the game. Like, who's going, who's got the hot hand. And Neesmith, Nemhard was going, Pascal was going, and Miles was going. That's 3 guys. It's hard. Tyrese is going to be the distributor. So that kind of leaves the odd man out all the time. So it's always one of them offensively. It's kind of left out in the starting rotation. Benedict, I'll give him a B for his first playoff game. Like, he started really well, but towards the end of the game, he wasn't getting to the line as much. He got shot happy. Tried to take guys in the ISO and then shoot over them. He's much better when and I think he's more threatening because if guys are afraid that he's going to get to the rim, if he's going to just take off towards the rim all the time, they're less likely to come out on those shots. So I don't know. They defended his shot really well because they knew that's what he was going to do out of those one-on-one ISOs. Top end, I'm going to give a D+. Pretty non-existent in this game, which isn't usually the case with him. Like, he had a nice dunk. I remember that. But that's really about it. I don't think he played that well, as his numbers kind of show. TJ McConnell, I'm going to give an A. I think, I guess that's not fair because he's not my player of the game. But I guess he can't really be a player of the game because Pascal was so good. I'll give Pascal an A. Let's give Pascal an A. And we'll give TJ an A. TJ was so good. He broke down this defense so much. Again, was part of that stagnant group, so not an A+. But again, I just feel like he did so many things. He looked like vintage TJ McConnell. Really played well defensively. There's only one time where he tried to go after a ball, and that led to a fast break with Giannis. Typically, like he usually does, he tries to get a McConnell every game where he steals that inbounds pass because the guy inbounding the ball isn't paying attention. He did that once and got a little too overzealous and went flying, and then they got a fast break out of it. Jarris Walker, I gave a B. Could be a B+. Jarris, extremely good on the boards, made all the small plays, built that confidence, and really looking forward to what he might be able to offer in series going forward. And then TB, Thomas Bryant, got some minutes here. I'm going to give him B-. He was solid. He didn't make any mistakes, really. So all in all, a good day for Thomas Bryant. Has some fouls to give to Giannis, and that's something that I think, we'll talk about as we preview game 2, is the fouls that they have and how we can utilize those. But yeah, let's talk about some box scores for the Pacers and Bucks. Kuzma, 0 field goals on 5 attempts. He had 0 free throws made on 2 attempts, 0 rebounds, 0 assists, 0 points, and he was a -24, a disaster, as some would say. Giannis Antetokounmpo, 14-23 from the field, 0 of 2 from 3, 8 of 15 from the free throw line, and 12 boards and 36 points, 1 assist. Brook Lopez, 3 field goals made on 6 attempted, 2 3-pointers attempted, none made. He did not hit a 3. 3 for 3 from the free throw line, and he had 4 total rebounds. He also had 9 points and -18. Taurean Prince, 1 field goal attempted, none made. He did not have any points. He only had 2 rebounds, 3 assists, and he was a -15. Ryan Rollins, 2 field goals on 8 attempted, 1 3-point made on 4 attempted. He had 2 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal, and a -13 on just 5 points. Brook Lopez, I think I didn't mention it, 9 points. Kevin Porter Jr., 2 of 7 from the field, 0 of 2 from 3-point land, 8 of 8 from the free throw. Really good free throw shooting night for Kevin Porter Jr. 5 total rebounds, 5 assists, 1 steal, -6 on 12 points. Bobby Portis, 2 field goals on 8 attempts, 0 of 4 from 3. He had 8 total rebounds, 1 turnover, and 4 points. He was a +3. Gary Trent Jr., 6 of 11 from the field, 2 of 7 from 3. He had 14 points on a -4 rating. AJ Green, 5 of 13, 5 3-pointers made, 11 attempted. He only really shoots 3-pointers. He's an awful mid-range shooter. He was like night and day. He was a -5 and had 15 points. And then the rest of them were kind of garbage time minutes. I think you could see some more Jericho Sims in these rotations for the Bucks, but we'll talk about that. Aaron Nesmith, 3 of 7, 1 of 3 from 3. He had 6 total rebounds, and he was a +8, 7 points. 10 of 15, Pascal, 3 of 5 from 3. He was 2 of 2 from the free throw line, 7 total rebounds, 2 assists. He was a +28 on 25 points. Miles, 7 of 12, 4 of 6 from 3. He was 1 of 2 from the free throw line. Total rebounds, 5. He had 2 assists, plus 24 and 19 points. Then you had Andrew Nembhard, 8 of 13, 1 of 3 from three-point land. He had 4 total rebounds, 5 assists. He had 2 steals, 23 plus in his minutes, and then 17 points. Tyrese Halliburton, 3 of 13, 0 of 7 from 3, 4 of 6 from the free throw line. He had 7 total boards, 12 assists, and 1 turnover, plus 27, 10 points. Top end, 2 of 3 from the field. So he wasn't too poor shooting the ball, but he just wasn't as involved. 1 3-pointer attempted, 1 made, and he went 1 of 2 from the free throw line, minus 16 on 6 points. Benedict Mathurin, 2 of 7, 1 of 6 from three-point land, 8 free throws and 8 made free throws. He had 5 total rebounds, and he was a plus 9 with 13 points. You had TJ McConnell, 5 of 7 on 1 of 2 from the free throw line, and he had 5 assists, 2 total rebounds, minus 3 and plus 11. Jarris Walker, 1 of 2, 1 of 1 from the 3-point line, 3-point line defensive rebounds, 5 total rebounds, 5. He had 1 steal, plus 4, and he had 3 points. Then Thomas Bryant, 1 field goal, 2 attempts, 1 3-point attempt, 1 field goal from 3 and 2 attempted, 3 of 4 from the free throw line. He had 1 total rebound. He was a minus 6 and had 6 points. And Johnny Furphy, 39 seconds and a minus 3. That's all he had. So that was your box score. And here's a little bit of a preview for game 2. What are some of the keys for these Pacers to win game 2? Again, I think the biggest thing is going to be obviously dependent on the availability of Damian Lillard. I do think that the Pacers do have the advantage still with Damian Lillard in the lineup. Again, I just don't expect him to play more than 30 minutes. I could be shocked because who knows, but I don't know. I just don't have confidence in the fact that like this player is going to come back after weeks off, after the diagnosis that he got, after all these things against a defender like Andrew Nembhard, playing in rotations that maybe he doesn't necessarily fit with. He's also got to learn some of these guys again. He hasn't played much with Kyle Kuzma. Giannis has played more as the facilitator, so they kind of got to balance that act again. And it's just really hard to add somebody back into a rotation in the playoffs, I think. Even when you do it in the regular season, it takes a little bit of an adjustment period to get them back going and the rotations back set. So I don't know. I just don't feel like they're going to tinker too much with the rotations. I think the Bucks still go with that same rotation minus Ryan Rollins, if that's the case. It's going to be Damian Lillard. It'll be Taurean Prince, Kyle Kuzma, Giannis, and then Brook Lopez. Pacers will still go with their same 5. I don't think anything changes really with their rotation. I think, there's some games you'll see more Thomas Bryant than less of Thomas Bryant, and that's pretty much it. They'll go with that 9 to 10 man rotation depending on what's going on in the game. I think some of the keys, I guess you could look for, keys for what the Pacers can do to win game 2. Slow down Damian Lillard if he is playing. Make sure he doesn't add his 2 cents. But again, if he goes for what he normally does against the Pacers, it'll be that 18 to 24, 25 range, which I still don't think is enough unless Giannis goes for like 50, 45 maybe. If he's over 40, I think the numbers of them winning is like through the roof. But I don't know. I think the Pacers are good at sticking him around the 30 to 38 mark and keeping him at that and keeping everybody else at bay like they have. But I think that's the other key is just keeping everybody where they were. Maybe limit AJ Green. I don't know if AJ Green hits 5 threes again. He's a great shooter, but I don't know if he's shooting 11 3-pointers if Dame's back. So we'll see. Rotations and adjustments. I think the only adjustments are going to be really, when you win a game, you don't make that many adjustments. I mean, you do, but you kind of go with what was working, which can always be dangerous for a team. Usually, obviously, the game or the team that has lost the game prior is the more dangerous because they tend to make the most adjustments and really focus in on what they did wrong. When you win a game, it's a little less easier. I guess it's a little less easy to kind of pinpoint what you want to work on. If I'm the Pacers, though, I'm going into this game going, we can be better at when it does get stagnant. What do we do? I think that's a big key with some of these rotations. I think getting that rotation out there with when you've got like Tyrese and TJ and Benedict and Pascal and Obi, I think that's a rotation you can really work on. Or Nemhard, Tyrese, and Obi and them. Like, getting that bench unit and the mixture of bench guys to work well. Jarris Walker, Obi Toppin, uh, that group I think could be better. So yeah, we'll see. I think that's what you do with the Pacers. You limit those rotations, figure out what you do with those rotations as far as when you get stagnant and how do you break out of that. Keep doing what you're doing against the zone. Maybe practice up a little bit, brush up a little bit on maybe some new looks against the zone. The next big thing is use all those fouls. I think it was a very interesting game plan. I don't know if it was necessarily like go out there and hack Giannis, but it was definitely like don't let Giannis get to the paint and get what he wants easily. And when you say that to players, it usually results in fouls just because they're going for, let's just try to make it as difficult as possible. And if that means getting a little bit more physical with Giannis around the rim, then we've got to do that. If the Pacers are going to throw 5 to 6 guys at him, depending, you got fouls to work with. You get 6 fouls each. So let's think about it. You had Pascal on him for the majority of the time. You get Neesmith sometimes. You get Miles Turner sometimes because of the switch. You get Jarris Walker randomly. And then Obi Toppin every once in a while. So that's 5 guys, maybe some Thomas Bryant again on those switches. So technically, if you're throwing that in, you got 6 guys with 6 fouls. That's 36 fouls. If you take out Thomas Bryant, that's 30 fouls. You got 35. You got 30 to 35 fouls to give to somebody, or even less. I guess 25, 30. That's a lot of fouling you can do. And if Giannis is going to continue to miss free throws, then you kind of live with that. You kind of live with sending him to the line, slow it down on their end, and hope for that. It does set the Pacers up out of foul shots. I guess they're a little bit more susceptible to having to play a half court. It's kind of harder to get out of a free throw into running out on a break, much more than like a missed shot, just because you've got more guys back already. And if Giannis is shooting free throws, they're much more aware of the fact of like, we need to get back quickly. Whereas like a shot, a lot of guys kind of stand around and look, and you got one guy getting back where you already have the 2 guards that are getting back. So yeah, I think it's a little bit more difficult. It kind of plays into the Bucks' hands if he is going to the free throw line a little bit more and he's actually hitting some of those, because then it can kind of backfire a little bit. But still, he's just so bad at the free throw line. Especially in Indiana. Like, I just feel like he's got more pressure on him, because even though players will say that doesn't bother them, that bothers them when they're chanting 10, 9, 8. Like, he's going to sit there and go, why are they counting down? What the heck? Like, I'm not doing anything. Even if he's not vocalizing it, he's got to think about it at least a little bit. So, yeah. And then the last thing I would do for the Pacers is figure out that elite rotation lineup thing that they have. So I'm talking about the Giannis, Bobby Portis, Gary Trent, Kevin Porter Jr., and AJ Green rotation / lineup. So they have 44 points. So this is out of 48 minutes. They've got 44 of the Bucks points. Typically, this rotation scores about 44 points when they're together in 14 minutes. Like, that's crazy. They shoot 53%. They shoot 48% from 3-point range. They are a 70% free throw shooting team when that rotation is out there. They grab 17 boards per 48. They've got 10 assists. Like, this is and they're a plus 16. This is a dominant lineup. Here's my thing. This lineup is usually and has been a result of Damian Lillard missing games. This is usually out there in the fourth quarter. I think this can exist in the fourth quarter, but you're going to bring Dame back in because he's Dame time. So you're going to bring him back in. So you've got to lose one of them. And I'm assuming the person that they would drop from this lineup would be AJ Green. I could see it AJ Green or Trent Jr. being the one they drop. Maybe Kevin Porter sometimes, but it's going to be one of those 3 guards. Because I really doubt that they would go really small and take out Portis. So maybe they do, because they had AJ Green guarding Pascal at times, which was a disaster for them. But like, if they're desperate, need points, maybe they drop Bobby. But like, if you have to play Bobby, Portis, and Giannis, and you've got to have Gary Trent, who's usually a thorn in the Pacer side, that leaves you AJ Green or Porter Jr. And I think you can try to say, like, I think Dame shoots threes well enough to kind of match what AJ Green can do. So we're going to put AJ Green out there. That's a bad defensive team out there. Besides, Portis is okay. He's serviceable. And Giannis is good. But those other three are brutal defensively. So I don't know. This Bucks team is just not a team that's going to stop anybody in the fourth quarter necessarily, especially guards. And that's when Nembhard and Turner and them usually have a huge success. And Portis is not typically as good as guarding Miles Turner either. So again, like I said, there are just not a lot of things that this flawed roster can do for the Bucks. It really does. It just comes down to, can Giannis and Dame outscore the starters for these Pacers? Because if those two cannot outscore the starters, they won't win. They just won't. They're just not deep enough. Because, and by that, it's hard to even say that like Pascal, Tyrese, and Miles can outscore Giannis and Dame. I think that's possible. So I think you're looking at that. And then you have to worry about Nembhard, Nesmith, Obi Toppin, TJ McConnell, and Jarris Walker adding points, because I think those five collectively are better than five that the Bucks can run out there on especially on nights that AJ Green is not playing as much, which I think AJ Green loses more minutes here because of Dame. I think Gary Trent loses maybe some minutes. Maybe Kevin Porter loses some minutes. So one of those guys is losing minutes, and all three of them have been pretty effective for the Bucks. So yeah, this is where rotations are funny. I'm telling you, this is where it is interesting for Doc, because people will say make adjustments, but it's like, okay, what would you do? Like, who's losing minutes in this core, especially this elite group? Because those five will be out there in the fourth quarter at some point, but I don't think it will be very long until Dame joins them. So, what are your thoughts? And maybe it's Giannis that joins them late. So, what are your thoughts? What are some keys to the Pacers beating these Bucks? I think it's going to be a very interesting game too. It's going to be a harder and more difficult game to win because of Giannis and Dame being back out there. I just, it adds an extra layer that you have to worry about. He does have games where he can blow up. If he does get going and hits threes, you could see an unworldly game from Dame. You could have one of those games. And I think we might get one of these series where he has those 20 to 30 point games, but maybe not. Maybe maybe this injury was enough to just impact him where he just can't be effective because he's just not back up to speed yet. That could also be a thing. So we'll see. Game 2 will be very telling, I think, on how this series is going to go. If the Bucks come out and put up a good fight, I think you could be in for that 6-game, 7-game series that many are predicting. If the Pacers come out and bust them up again, I just don't know if the Bucks have enough to really challenge the Pacers more than 5 games. So we'll see. Lots to talk about, I think, when we come back on. So they play Tuesday night. I'll record something probably maybe Tuesday night or Wednesday evening. So it'll be up there. It'll probably be Wednesday evening, actually. So it'll be up there before game on Friday. And then on Friday of next week, we will have the game then. I can't do an episode until Sunday. So I'll probably go live on Sunday after game 3. So game 3 will have to wait a little bit just because I'm not around to be able to record until Sunday, which is fine because they play Sunday night. So I'll probably go live on Sunday just to talk Pacers and do that a live show, and maybe some people join as far as just watching it. But if not, I'll upload it as a podcast, and it'll be available Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon. And then they don't play again until Sunday night at like 9:30. So thank you for listening. If you got this far, I know it was a long one, but usually I think these Pacer playoff games will probably be an hour and 30 to 2 hours breaking down all things that happen in the series. It was a great first game win. Like I said, 75.6% of teams that have won the first game in a 7-round set typically go on to win the series, and the Pacers have done that. So that is very exciting. I think that they have a great chance to win game 2. Final prediction for game 2, I'm going to go Pacers 119 to the Bucks 110. I think that the Pacers will have enough, and their depth just seems to be too much of an issue for a lot of teams. And I just don't know if Dame plays that many minutes coming off of a health scare that was life-threatening, but also the fact that he hasn't played in weeks. I just don't think that they're going to run him out there for 30 minutes. So we'll see what happens, what's reported. Follow along on Twitter. We are at the Pacer Fever Show. You can find us on Facebook, the Pacer Fever Show. And then you can also find us over on Instagram, the Pacers Fever Show. I'm on YouTube. So if you're listening to the audio version, you want to see this face, I usually do like a rundown on the right-hand side, and you can see us on YouTube and watch that if you are a visual learner. If you're an audio learner, you can do that on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcast. And I think that will do it. So until next time, let's go Pacers. Let's win this game 2. Let's head back to Milwaukee up 2-0. Thanks again for listening, and we will see you next time on the Pacer Fever Show.